You ever wonder how some families manage to hold on to their fortunes for like centuries, while most fortunes just vanish after one generation? It's not about luck, and it's not just about working harder than everyone else. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the hidden architecture, the blueprint the ultra-wealthy use to make their capital last forever. Yeah, this quote really nails it, doesn't it? It's such a common story. Someone builds a massive fortune, and then poof, it's gone. But for a tiny select group, well, they seem to be playing by a completely different set of rules. They figured out how to build something that can survive, messy divorces, lawsuits, bad decisions, even time itself. So what is their secret? That's the big question for today, right? And here's a hint. It's not just one big thing. It's actually a series of really clever, deliberate, structural locks that they put in place. And we're going to break them down one by one. All right, here it is, the big secret. And honestly, it's going to sound completely backward at first. The secret to lasting wealth is to stop owning it. I know it sounds crazy, right? To protect your money forever, you have to legally separate yourself from it. But trust me, this one idea, this single shift in thinking, is the key to this whole thing. Okay, so let's dive into the first structural lock. And I gotta say, I love this one because it uses this really simple but brilliant analogy to explain something that can feel kind of complex. The idea of separating ownership from control from benefit. So check this out. The typical way people think about this is, I'll just give my kids the whole tree, right? The entire asset. But what if they don't know how to take care of it? What if they just decide to chop it down for quick cash, the firewood? The fortress approach, though, is totally different. The goal isn't to give them the tree, it's to protect the tree forever. The heirs get all the fruit they could ever want, year after year, but they can never, ever touch the tree itself. So how does this actually work in the real world? Well, it all comes down to a trust. It's a three-part system. First, a legal trust is created to own the tree. That's all the assets. Second, a professional trustee, someone impartial, is put in charge of controlling the tree. And third, the family, the heirs. They just get to enjoy the fruit. They're the beneficiaries. They get the income, the dividends, all the benefits. It's a genius way to protect the core wealth from, a messy divorce, a terrible business idea, or just an heir who's bad with money. All right, so Lock 1 protects the assets from the inside. But what about threats from the outside? Like a business going under or a major lawsuit? That brings us to Lock number 2, building financial firewalls. For most of us, our financial lives are like a tangled web. Everything is connected. Your job is connected to your car payment, which is connected to your mortgage. It's basically a giant line of dominoes. And if one of them falls, say you lose your job, the whole thing can come crashing down. The fortress approach, on the other hand, is all about isolation. It's about building firewalls. So instead of you personally owning, say, 10 different warehouses, you create a holding company. That holding company then owns 10 separate little companies, and each one of those owns just one warehouse. See what's happening? Now, if warehouse A gets hit with some catastrophic lawsuit, only company A is affected. The other 9 warehouses, your house, everything else, it's all legally walled off, untouchable. You've contained the disaster. And all this structure stuff leads us to a really crucial shift in mindset. It's about moving up what you could call the ownership ladder. It's not just about owning stuff. It's about what level of ownership you're operating at. Look, most people start at the bottom of the ladder. Labor. You trade your time for a paycheck, and that paycheck gets taxed, right? Maybe you climb up to step 2, owning assets. You buy some stocks, maybe some real estate. That's great. But the final step, the place where real permanent wealth is built, that's step 3, owning the owners. This is where you're not just a player in the game, you're controlling the whole game board through things like holding companies. Your money isn't coming from your time anymore, it's coming from the machine you've built. Okay, we've made it to the final lock. And frankly, this might be the most powerful one of the bunch. This is the big one. This is how the wealthy can actually spend their massive fortunes without handing over a giant slice to the government in taxes. So let me ask you a question. Let's say you have a $50 million portfolio and you want to spend $5 million of it. How do you get the cash? The answer most people would give is exactly the wrong one. Okay, so here's the deal. The typical move is to sell some assets to get the cash, right? But the second you sell, you trigger a massive capital gains tax bill. The fortress move, you don't sell anything. Instead, you take a loan out against your assets. And here's the magic trick. A loan is an income, it's debt, so it's not a taxable event. You get your $5 million in cash, your $50 million portfolio keeps growing, and you didn't have to pay a dime in taxes. And let's just put a real number on that for a second. In that scenario, selling those assets could easily trigger a tax bill of around $15 million. Gone. By taking a loan instead, that entire $15 million bill just disappears. This isn't some tiny loophole we're talking about. It is a core, fundamental strategy for keeping capital intact. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, but you still have to pay back the loan, right? Yes, and here is the final incredible piece of the puzzle. It's a tax rule called stepped-up basis. When you die and your heirs inherit that $50 million portfolio, the tax system basically hits a reset button. The cost of those assets gets stepped up to whatever they're worth on the day you die. All those years or decades of built-up capital gains, poof, wiped clean. So your heirs can then sell off a small piece of the portfolio, pay back the loan, completely tax-free, and the whole cycle starts over again. It's wild. So as we start to wrap this up, let's just zoom out for a second and think about the big picture here. What do all of these locks really represent? You know, anyone can get rich, but making that wealth last, making it permanent, that's a whole different ballgame. And it's not about hustle culture or working 20-hour days. It's about competence. It's about shifting your mindset from being just a worker to being an architect, someone who designs a financial machine that's built to withstand anything and everything for generations to come. So I want to leave you with a question to chew on. Out of all these strategies we just talked about, which one was the most surprising to you? Was it the whole fruit tree idea with the trust, the financial firewalls, climbing that ownership ladder, or was it that wild strategy of living on tax-free loans? Each one is a pretty powerful piece of the puzzle, and when you put them all together, you really start to see the true architecture of wealth that lasts forever.
Subscribe to Financial Wisdom Prime, your edge in money, power, and smart investing, where we break down the strategies the wealthy use to stay ahead.